Hey there, I'm Erin, and I am genetically destined to develop Alzheimer's disease. I want to talk a little bit about what that means. We've all heard that Alzheimer's disease is genetic, right? And so people fear that if their grandma or grandpa succumbed to Alzheimer's disease at an older age, that they too will do so. But that's not exactly the case, and it's not quite like that. Alzheimer's disease has a variety of risk factors that are not all fully understood, and one of them is a gene called ApoE4. If you've got one ApoE4 gene, you're at increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, and you could inherit two copies of ApoE4 from both of your parents, and in that case, you would be at an even higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So, in that way, it is genetic. However, it's certainly not what some call deterministic. It's just an increased risk. And there is a belief that other modifiable risk factors contribute, things like diet, exercise, cholesterol, heart health. They say what's good for your heart is good for your brain. And those things might help even if you do have an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. Age is the biggest risk factor. So as people age and they go from their 60s to their 70s to their 80s to the 90s, the risk of developing Alzheimer's increases dramatically with each of those decades. When I talk about my genetic risk and the risk that families like mine carry, that's something different. There are a set of rare mutations on three genes: APP, PSEN1, presenilin-1, or PSEN2, presenilin-2, that cause your body to do different things. One of them is to overproduce amyloid beta. And amyloid beta, the buildup, the accumulation of amyloid in the brain, is what creates amyloid plaques, which is one of the markers of Alzheimer's disease. These genes are not risk genes. They are what's called deterministic, meaning that if one of your parents carries one of these genetic mutations, you have a 50% chance of inheriting it, and you're likely to develop symptoms at the same age your parent did. There are somewhere between 200 and 350 genetic mutations that have been identified as disease-causing. And when I talk about my genetic risk, that's what I'm referring to. You shouldn't be super worried about this because there are only around 10% of Alzheimer's cases are early onset Alzheimer's, and of those, only a small percentage of those are caused by these genes. So it's really like 1% or so of overall Alzheimer's cases that are caused by deterministic genetic mutations like these. However, they are really important for a couple of reasons. One, because they're devastating to the families that they impact. Imagine, families, and there are people in our community where 9 out of 11 siblings have all developed Alzheimer's disease around the same time that their parent did. Obviously, that's tragic and terrifying and very, very difficult, but also because the fact that the scientists know a person's likely trajectory of disease, they're a really, really awesome candidate for research. Scientists can study what's happening inside the person's body and brain. Scientists can test therapies with these families who are desperate for solutions. And hopefully, by working with these families, we can find ways to prevent or delay Alzheimer's disease, not only for people with deterministic genetic mutations, but also for people that are at risk of developing late onset Alzheimer's disease. So anyway, I hope that's helpful, and I hope if you're somebody who's worried about developing Alzheimer's disease because someone in your family has done so, it provides a little bit of solace that it's not so black and white, and that you're not destined to develop Alzheimer's disease late in life just because someone else in your family did. So take care of yourself, and thank you so much for your interest in my story.